Esty. He's former president of the Wellfleet Historical Society and Museum. He is fascinated by the history of Wellfleet, and he really knows as much as anyone, I would say.
And I'm really going to talk about the Payne Hollow Historic District. And it really starts right here. Some people call this Payne Hollow Landing. But back in 1802, this was Townsend's Landing, because the Townsends had a house right over here. And they were involved in salt making. They had, right up here, we had salt work. One of three in South Wellfleet. In 1837, there were 39 in South Wellfleet, producing 10,000 bushels of salt. So why was this a good place to make salt other than it's sunny? Well, because you had a buyer right over here. You had the Southern Wharf, which was at the end of Old Wharf Road. And if you look over, you see that beach area. It's just to a little bit of the left of that, about where that boat is sitting. There was a wharf that extended out here, and there were generally about 24 boats working out of there. And we talk about, Wellfleet's an oyster town. You get their money from oysters. Bill was just mentioning the blackfish. That particular stranding, they claim, was 1,500 blackfish all over the beaches here, and everybody in the town got a lot of money out of it that year. But the town had its biggest growth out of mackerel. Between 1820 and 1850, this town's population went from 1,400 people to 2,400 people. It almost doubled, based on the mackerel fishery. Because within town, there were up to 100 boats involved in the fishery, and that also brought in all the people, not only the crews, but it also brought in all the people that had the sail makers and the barrel makers and the people that were going to produce the salt, because for the mackerel, you needed salt. So this was very convenient. You're producing salt right here, and it's going to be used right over there. To be a wharf, it had to have buildings on it. It doesn't have buildings on it, it's up here. So it was a wharf. There were 3 buildings on it most of the time. One of those buildings was specifically to store salt that they would be using on those ships. And the others, there was one that was for barrels and ropes and all the other things that they needed. And then there was one that would actually hold the barrels of mackerel until they were ready to be shipped out. So it was a very busy place. Had that wharf not been built, and had we not had the salt works here, there is a good chance that Payne Hollow might have ended up being called something else. Because the wharf, although it was not built by a Payne or a Cole, very soon after it was built, Collins Cole and Nathan Payne bought it. And so they ran that particular wharf for a long time. And even other members of the Cole family and Payne family got involved in the running of it. And that's what really brought them to Payne Hollow. Although there was a Payne before that wharf was built. The first Payne showed up about 1810, 1808, but the Townsends were already here. So this was Townsend's Landing. Yes, Walter.
Just as a quick point on the mackerel fishery. At one time, the town of Wellfleet was 4th largest mackerel fishing port in Massachusetts.
And that's really, if you look at the central district of Wellfleet, a lot of those houses were built 1820 to 1850. They were built on mackerel money. And that's when this town was probably considered its richest.
Where did they go for the mackerel and why did it end?
The mackerel, they depleted the resource. That's why it ended. And they would chase them all up and down the coast. So they would be, right off Chatham. There would be huge schools. Schools of mackerel still come in occasionally. I've seen them right at the where the square dance is. I've seen mackerel there, but not enough to be a fishery. And Provincetown Harbor, they had a lot of mackerel. But they, when the mackerel weren't here, they would chase them. They'd be gone 3 or 4 days chasing mackerel
And they were caught with nets?
and salting it there.
And they were netted?
And that was, at first they were jigged.
Oh, yeah.
At first they were jigged. And so Charles Cole has already been mentioned, Charles F. Cole, and he wrote a memoir. And if you read it, the library has a copy. If you read it, he explains the whole process of mackerel fishing because he fished for mackerel before he became a teacher. Teaching a lot easier than fishing for mackerel. But as a boy, you got a half share as you fished, and the adults got the full share. You could, if you could prove you could fish to an adult level, you'd get more.
When they start, like 10 years old, and they start?
They go out. It could be as early as 8, but yeah, 10's pretty general, and that's why the fishermen's school, like Pine Hill School, had a shorter school year, because as soon as the boats could go, they were gone.
Okay, we've got to walk gradually uphill to Payne Hollow.